Thank you, everyone, for coming. It is now 5 p.m. I believe we have a quorum, so everyone, please stand. The secretary will read the notice. Sorry.
Notice of public meeting of the City Commission of the City of Brownsville pursuant to Chapter 551, Title 5 of the Texas Government Code. The Texas Open Meetings Act notice is hereby given that the City Commission of the City of Brownsville, Texas, in accordance with Article 5, Section 12 of the Charter of said city, will convene a regular meeting on Tuesday, January 21st, 2020, at 5 p.m. in the Commission Chambers on the second floor of Brownsville City Hall, Old Federal Building located at 1001 East Elizabeth Street, Brownsville, Cameron County, Texas. If everyone would please stand for the invocation of the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Father God, we thank you for your love, your grace, and your mercy. And Lord God, today, our nation is hurting. Right here in Brownsville, we have families that are hurting. And so, Lord, we ask you to bring your healing, bring your truth, bring your repentance, and bring forgiveness where needed to bring us together. Lord God, we ask you specifically to lead and guide our Mayor Pro Temp tonight and our city commissioners and all of the presenters for the best for the city of Brownsville. And Lord God, we ask all of this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. And now we're going to have a moment of silence where we can add our prayers to the families, for the families that we know that are hurting right here in our city. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Next, we have our presentations. Grand Healthy Texas Mothers and Babies Community Coalition.
Honorable Mayor Pro Tem and Commissioners, good evening.
Good evening.
I'm really excited because this is the first time in this history of the city that we can be up here to talk about a community health assessment. This has been ongoing for a year. Last year, this grant afforded us the opportunity to go out into the community and do a needs assessment. The funding and the reason we're here today is because the maternal and childhood program, we're one of 11 cities statewide that was granted these funds due to the effects of the recent Zika event. So tonight we have one of our grant-funded positions, Ms. Michelle Jones, epidemiologist, that will present to us the findings of the community health needs assessment. With that, thank you.
Thank you for having me, everyone, and for allowing me to participate in this event. As Dr. Rodriguez had said, the Healthy Texas Mother and Baby Community Coalition is a Title V grant program, and it began in 2019, January. And one of the goals that we had to do was also present to our leaders and to our community what our findings were from this needs assessment, and then also try to align the coalition with the Healthy People 2020 goals, which the CD puts out every 10 years, and they update it based on the health of the country. Some of the components that we looked at was we did a literature review, we looked at local and state data, we surveyed key informants, we also surveyed our community. And what we found when we conducted the literature review was we were lacking in nutrition, systems, and access to care. And as we're going into the population demographics, some of this you probably already know, but some of it may be new. The median age in Brownsville was 30.3. We have 21.57% of our population is women of reproductive age, which means 15 to 44 years. We have a very young population with 31.71% being under the age of 18, 8.6% are 5 years or younger. And when you notice the age distribution of our reproductive women, we actually see a noticeable drop-off after 24, and that's kind of interesting to see. As we know, Brownsville is Hispanic or Latino. We've got 4.8% that are white and then 0.4% that are African American. And as we go through the slides, due to the HIPAA regulations and patient identifiers, you will see oftentimes that the African American population will be suppressed because it could lead to identification of the individual. We do have 30% that are foreign-born, 70% are native-born, and English proficiency with limited capabilities of speaking English is at 23.9%. And we've identified this as to make sure that we have ample amount of English and Spanish in our communications, whether it's community outreach or information that we're disseminating to the public. And these numbers are from the U.S. Census Bureau, 2013 to 2017. Our income is well below the state median by $21,415. We also have a high poverty rate of 31.4%, which are below the 110% federal poverty level. And our highest amount of participants that are in poverty are our single female head of households with children under the age of 18. And our most prosperous are the married married households with children. Our educational attainment is low, so that also means that when we need to target our information, we don't want to use things that are above the high school equivalency. We want to make sure that our population is able to understand what they are reading and being told. So we have a little over 35% that don't have a high school education. So we want to keep that in mind as we're speaking to the public. When it comes to our maternal and child health characteristics, Brownsville has 20.88 per 1,000 birth rate for 2015. The babies are 52% male, 48% female. And when we look at the age of the mother, we've got 52.33, which are to mothers between the ages of 15 to 19, which is a really high teen pregnancy rate in the area. And this does not include 14 and 13, 12s and 11s. Those numbers were being suppressed, but they are occurring in Brownsville. The other numbers are good and stable. When we're looking at our low birth weight by age, and this one we're doing the Brownsville and Harlingen because that was the lowest statistical area that we were able to get a hold of. And you're going to see the low birth weights are occurring with women that are over the age of 40. So that's something to think about, especially when we're practicing medicine or if we're educating our population, is that there are additional risk factors when you become more seasoned with life. And then this one right here, I don't have the individual causes of the infant mortality because Brownsville actually is exceptionally well at this. The Healthy People 2020 goal is to be under 6 per 1,000 live births, and Brownsville is at 3.7. And that will tell you why I'm not able to give the exact numbers, because the numbers are so low. Each occurrence is happening under 10, which means it's an identifiable illness that could track back to the family. But we have congenital malformations, atelectasis, bacterial sepsis, short gestation and low birth weight issues, and then intrauterine hypoxia and birth asphyxia. Okay. And then we go on to the breastfeeding portion, because breastfeeding is such an important aspect of a healthy population, not only to our children, but also to the health of mothers. So, and this, we can only get down to the Public Health Region 11 because that's as small as the WIC survey would go. But we have 47% breastfed for 3 or more months, but 16.3% exclusively breastfed for 3 or more months. We have 22.5% that breastfed for 6 months or more, but 4.4% exclusively breastfed for 6 months or more. And that's important to note because the CDC and WHO, or the World Health Organization, recommend that exclusive breastfeeding occur for the first 6 months of life. So they don't want any formula supplemented at any point. And so one of the other things we looked at is how come we don't have the exclusivity? And the top reasons, and they could select more than one option, was 52.9% said they had to go back to work or to school. 51.7% didn't think they had enough milk, and 50.1% had trouble sucking or latching on. And these are all areas that we can actually address as a city to actually improve those numbers. And some of them, it doesn't take as much effort. They're easier solutions on some of them. And then we have right here where we're looking at the breastfeeding. We notice that there's a difference between the white females and your Hispanic populations. And these are going to be at the time of discharge. And it's important to note that Public Health Region 11 has a wonderful amount of women who are actually leaving the hospital breastfeeding, but we see a big decline directly after. And like I said, we're seeing an age distribution difference between your Hispanic and your white populations. And then if you look specifically at the ethnicity between 2011 and 2016, our white women are much lower down, which is actually an inverse of what we see throughout the country. And when we're talking about maternal health, it's important to address that there are 5 major risk factors for a female. And one of them is going to be whether she's diabetic, hypertensive, obese, and those are going to be your chronic factors. And then the other one is smoking and pregnancy among women that are over 40. And smoking, there's hardly any smoking whatsoever among your pregnant women, at least what's being reported. And if you look at the chart, the hypertension and the diabetes, we see some slight decline or stabilization, but we're seeing an increase in our obesity, which is a risk factor. And we also note that children under 6, we have a good insurance rate on those. But once we get into adulthood, those insurance rates rapidly decrease, and that's going to be largely among the Hispanic and Latino, which is 67.1. All other ethnicities are at 80%. Now, another portion of the community health needs assessment was that we actually went out and looked for key informants, and that could be your nonprofits, business, anyone who's dealing with the maternal and child health population. And what we did, they kind of had a more open-ended question so they could fill in items. And what we found here is if you look across a lot of these, whether it was maternal health, adolescent, child, infant, you're seeing a lot of issues with access to care, whether that's mental health access, prenatal, postnatal. Also on education, it's important to know, because you're going to see that across multiple graphics, that education does not necessarily mean education in a traditional sense, whether it's like school or university. Education is having the access on how to perform better, education on obesity, education on how to use a car seat properly, and things even for grandparents and stuff to know. So it's a broader concept. Definitely with our teen pregnancy, contraception, that's always something to look into. And then, like I said, if you look at the general maternal and child health, nutrition, mental health, and insurance. So we're looking at nutrition, access to care, kind of what we were seeing in our literature review. Now, the other part of our survey is we actually went out into the community and to see what the people on the ground are actually saying. This map is, each one of the points is where we held a survey event. And it's important to notice that we did do a convenience sampling, which means we can't do statistical significance onto it, but to make up for that and to make it as applicable as we could to the population, we made sure we went into high-end income areas, lower income. We went to federally, the federal, FQHR.
Federally qualified,
qualified health clinics, thank you. And we got 178 respondents. 121 were in English, 57 were in Spanish. And the locations of the surveys, there were a total of 18. And this was a dense questionnaire because we had 94 questions and 14 topics, which averaged anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes. And to have 178 people sit through it was kind of neat. And we always had an English speaker and a Spanish speaker. And the way we structured it is we wanted to have as many honest answers as we were capable of getting. So although it wasn't completely anonymous because we were there, we let them fill out all the information on their own. And we were there to provide any assistance if they wanted clarity on a question or, pretty much just clarity on a question, or if there was like a language barrier, a better interpretation of how the question was being presented to them. And this one right here is a little bit of demographics just to show that we were trying to get a well-established to make the survey respondents be as close to our population as possible. The average age was 42.1. We had a minimum of 16 and a maximum of 84. So we did have like grandparents and great-grandparents that wanted to participate and be part of the conversation. We had 53% that were head of households, with another 47% that weren't. We had a good distribution. Mostly were female, 92%, but those 7% that were male, they were really gung-ho, and they wanted to be really active participants in the mother's life and what her health needs were. And I found that really encouraging, because sometimes people were discouraged because it doesn't seem like something that would affect men, but men are an integral part of the maternal and child health. We also had, so we went into why people aren't going to see a healthcare provider. And this is going to be, we had 22% that didn't see a doctor within the year among our adolescent population. And the big one was, and just so you know, when they skipped, it's because it wasn't applicable to them. So that's why they're skipping. It's not that they're refusing to answer, it's just it doesn't apply to them. But on this one, they didn't feel that they needed to go, and they lacked insurance. Those were the big ones that you're going to see kind of across. 12% of the children did not see a doctor. And on this one, you're going to see lack of insurance comes up again. And then 9% had just various odd little answers. So each one was kind of like their own little category on other. And then for infant health, which was, this one was slightly surprising, because we have 14% that didn't see the doctor within a year after the baby was being born. So I don't know if that was a clarity issue, but they should be covered and have seen a doctor. And that one is, you're going to see lack of insurance was another one, and then other popped up. But on this one, we had 77% where it didn't apply to them. But an interesting thing is that, and we saw this in other responses, was that when it came to the small children, we had a lot more people who wanted to refuse to answer, so they felt real protective of that. And that's important to know, especially when we're dealing with certain topics. And this is pertaining to the mother. We had 31% that didn't see, of our respondents, that did not see a doctor within the last year. And once again, we're seeing lack of insurance as a big one. So that's definitely being able to access care in the area. Another interesting topic, and this kind of addresses the 3 of our maternal health risks with our obesity, hypertension, and diabetes, is preconception health. And that, in essence, means before you become pregnant, are we addressing certain health issues that you have pre-existing? Are we developing a plan, making sure that we're setting this up the way that you'd want, that your body is healthy before we embark on that grand adventure? And on that one, we have 53% that had heard of it, but 41% had not heard of it. And that's definitely an area where we can educate the population, because it could also be just the term that's being used might sound unfamiliar for them. So that's one area that could be a fairly easier fix. And then this one I found really interesting, because this one is how long after a baby is born is it safe to become pregnant again? And the CDC and the WHO recommend 12 to 18 months, depending on what agency. But we have one brave guy who says immediately after. We have a bunch of 1 to 3 months. It gets a little better because we've got 12% that are saying, little later on in the year. And we only had 1% of the people who skipped where it didn't apply to them. So that one is definitely an education portion that we can reach out and let them know that we do, because it takes 9 months to create a child. And we need extra time to fix ourselves, because it's a very traumatic experience on the female body to create a child and then deliver it into the world.
I remember after I had my first child, my first question to my doctor was, why would anybody ever do this again?
I know, right?
She said, you'll be back here soon, and
Yeah.
you'll know the answer, and sure enough.
Yeah, because it does. It takes a toll on the
Very
body.
painful. Yeah.
Another important thing, like we had mentioned before, was the breastfeeding aspect of it, and it's very important to implement breastfeeding and to begin that process well before the delivery. And what we found here is when we asked people if they decided whether or not they wanted, once they had children, if they were going to breastfeed, we found that only 35% were committed to it. We have 5% that are neutral, but we have 22% that are refusing or are saying no, that they don't want to breastfeed at all. And that would be one area to delve a little deeper and figure out exactly why is it that they are choosing not to. There's a variety of different reasons, and it would be nice to go further into that one to figure it out. And what are some of the reasons that they might not? It's inconvenient. Where's that? Disregard the pressure, that's actually 1%. It's backwards, sorry. A lack of privacy. A lot of people feel exposed while they're breastfeeding, especially if there's not lactation areas for mothers while they're out and about or at work. And then if you stopped breastfeeding before you wanted to, what was the reason? And a lot of it was, you've got 13% that are saying medical reasons or that they returned to work. And some of those medical reasons can be addressed beforehand with proper planning. So those are areas we can address it. And then also with baby not tolerating or lack of supply, those are educational. And then another one that we looked at was the pregnancy planned? And we only have 18% that are saying that their pregnancy was planned. So we definitely want that number to be higher, so that way we have healthier outcomes as we go along. And then were the following resources available or accessible to you before becoming pregnant? And this is birth control options, open communication with the family, open communication with the partner. And a lot of these services are actually available at some of the clinics in town. So for them not to have access or weren't sure that they were available, we can definitely do more education on that aspect. And then what are the top, and this is kind of like the bulletin one, what are your top concerns regarding these issues? And the big ones were growth, nutrition, and sudden infant death syndrome. So you notice that growth is often tied in with nutrition also. SIDS, if you breastfeed your child, is less likely to experience SIDS because you're getting up so frequently with them. And the nutrition. And then for children, it was growth, nutrition, and making sure that everybody's vaccinated. And we've got a high one, 77% are saying that for nutrition. Adolescents, this is where we start getting some differences. Mental health, substance abuse, and teen pregnancy. And then for women of childbearing age, we've got mental health, substance abuse, and teen pregnancy, which is mirroring the adolescents. And then we wanted to see where's the best way to target some of our efforts when we go into the field. What are the way that people are consuming their information? And what we found is that people are still using newspapers. Social media is the big winner along with television. But like I said, newspapers at 26%, the flyers, and city website. So it's important to make sure that the information that we have available on any online presence is very accurate and up to date. And then we looked at, since social media was such a big component and it's one of the easier ones to disseminate information on, we wanted to see what they were looking at. And as you'd expect, Facebook is a big one. 80% of our respondents were looking at that. But we also have the WhatsApp at 30%, YouTube at 33%, and Instagram. So those are ones that you'd really want to utilize. And then even some of the smaller ones, Snapchat, those are geared more towards younger individuals. So if you're looking at targeting teen pregnancy, that would also be a good avenue to approach. And then what we found for some of our major conclusions is that one thing that we're low on is the prenatal care. 66% of our females, and this one's going to be Brownsville, Harlingen, are going to see prenatal care in the first trimester. One of the Healthy People 2020 goals is they want 77% of women to make it in there. Teen pregnancy is definitely too high. And a recurring topic of nutrition or issues that were relating to nutrition, including worries over growth, also birth defects. And then the percent of pregnant women who were obese increased by 18% over the 2011 to the 2015. And one of the important things to note also that we had mentioned previously is that with the exclusive breastfeeding, there's 46.2% at 3 months and 25.5%, and that's what they that the Healthy People want us to be up higher, because in Brownsville it was much lower on both of those. I think it was 4.4 on the 6 months. So, and those are, like I said, those are areas, some of it, a lot of it is just education and disseminating answers and providing answers to what people are asking us in the public. So, if any of you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Can you disseminate this information in schools, like high schools, if there's such a high rate of teen pregnancies?
Yeah, we can actually, and I've actually delivered this to United Way. I've done 2 previous presentations on it also with the various coalition members, so like some of the hospitals, some of the different nonprofits, breastfeeding organizations. I've also been approached by 2 separate entities asking if maybe I could present this to some of the doctors and to some of the individuals that are working with some of these groups. So I can definitely do it, and we can customize it for, because some of it's a little too dense for some, depending on what level of school you're going into. But yeah, we can definitely do, I'm always willing to work with anyone,
And let me add that this is the first community assessment we've done internally, and the next steps are to disseminate this information. We've raised the awareness. There is a desire to know more. So we want to share this knowledge. So this is kind of like one place where we're presenting this because it's a deliverable for the grant, but we're definitely pursuing other venues where we will be having these conversations with different interested partners in the community.
I think it's important to note that the community, when we have gone out and done the presentations, they've been really receptive and very active in wanting more information, or how can we connect all of these different groups, because if we're seeing education popping up as one, and we have the resources here, how can we get all of them to kind of be on the same page? And that's one of the things that when we were discussing it among prospective coalition members that they said would be nice to know, because sometimes they have clients that come in that don't necessarily fit their requirements, but somebody else can serve them, and they're not necessarily sure if they know who to send them to or how to help them, give them the little extra helping hand that they need to navigate the systems.
Could you send me a copy of that PowerPoint?
Yeah.
All right.
I would think I think you should add a couple of things to it, and that is your data on obesity is old. It only stops at 2015, and we know from the cohort data that is much more recent that rates are starting to decrease of obesity, so you might want to add that as a caveat. And secondly, you might want to, along with your questions about breastfeeding and whether or not you do and what are your barriers and such, you should interview the hospitals and the clinics to find out whether they have full-time lactation consultants. And what are the resources within the community for access to lactation consultants when you go home? Because those 2 items are the biggest problem with getting mothers to breastfeed. It's not because their clinic doesn't talk to them about breastfeeding, but it's because the clinic may say it's good to breastfeed, but there's no lactation consultant to back it up. And when you deliver at a hospital, it's very common that if you deliver on the weekend, the lactation consultant is only working Monday through Friday. Or gets cut because of budget. So in addition to the results, you should also show some of the remedies. And in the case of lactation, it's not education from your mother, your sister, your aunt. It's education from a trained lactation consultant or community health worker that is not provided in the city.
No, I understand that. We actually did speak out. I've been in contact with the Vicki Sains with the Infant Nutrition Association, and I'm also in close contact with Claudia Soto from the WIC department. And I've been asked to present, and they're working on it, if I can present to some of the doctors in the hospitals. But we haven't brought any of that up, and that's one thing that we are looking into with our partners, because they're seeing different things. And I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but part of the ACA is that your insurance covers you to speak with a lactation consultant. It's required by law. So, and that's one thing that a lot of people aren't aware of, is that they do. They also, your insurance pays for your breast pumps and some of the supplies in order for you to have a breast pump if you want to breastfeed your child. And so part of that is knowing what's available and what the laws are. Because if you don't know that you don't have a lactation, or that you have, your insurance covers lactation, like Medicaid covers it, all of the private insurance companies are required to cover it. If you don't know that, sometimes you don't know the questions to ask. And like I said, we're working with some of the hospitals, but if we also let the people know that they have that option to even ask, I think that's a beginning. And that's what we're working with the WIC department and the other, because it's a wonderful point, I think. UT Medical had actually brought that up when they were discussing that you breastfeed only as much as your practitioners helping you out with, or your midwife, or someone who's part of your team, and if they're not as fluently behind it, then you have a breakdown in the system. So that is one thing, and I appreciate you for bringing that up, because we are looking at that. We just don't have all of that available right now. Maybe in the next presentation we'll have.
So I would agree with Dr. Gowan on those points. And the other thing that I saw in this presentation that really alarmed me is our teenage rate of pregnancy. And that's really concerning. And as most of us know, kids now are not at the same level that we may have been when we were younger. And I was just curious if we could go and look at other cities who have had this issue and have been successful in lowering that rate. And if there's anything that us as a city, do we have to work with our school districts? Is there, obviously we're not doing something right, and I feel like we could be doing more. I'm of the belief that every baby is a blessing, but at the same time, I would like to see our moms, have options and resources for things like that.
Yeah, and we've been working with the Good Samaritan on some of those issues. They're actually tackling a large portion of those issues in the high school, and they're actually moving into the middle school, because we've been alerted that parents are asking their children in middle school to become pregnant now. And we've got a list of, we don't have a list, Good Samaritan does, on needing volunteers to go in and help mentor these females, because they are being asked to become pregnant, so that for financial benefits.
Well, one, that's really alarming, but also kids nowadays just have more access to things online and on cell phones and all kinds of, anywhere that you turn, a child has access to content that maybe a parent is not monitoring. And, it's so different to be a parent now, and it's so different to be a child now, that I just hope that the city can help any public entity, and every public entity would come together to help out these people who are in this situation.
I think that's a great idea. Like, if any of you would like to sit in on a coalition meeting, because it's always nice to have a different perspective, because we're not going to think of everything. Yeah, and it's nice that we're actually trying to actively recruit mothers right now to see if they would like to join, because we want their input. So if anybody would ever, I'll extend an invitation out to any and all of you, that if you would like to sit in and see where we're progressing, or have some real good participatory ideas, I would be more than welcome, and I know our coalition members would be.
I'd love to.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
I think that'd be great.
I appreciate it.
Good job.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Is this a grant that we're going to be applying for every year, or is this a multi-year grant?
Good question. So part of the assessment is it shows the need in the community that it needs to continue. And the data right now is supporting the need to continue this grant. So to answer your question directly, every year I have to go back and have these conversations with the state. But I think we're off to a good start, because some of the rates are just above average or above where they should be. So right now, without being too optimistic, I think this grant will continue being funded for the short term.
Wonderful.
So it's important to track the progress that we're making on these important issues.
Yes. So we do give metrics to them on every item that we're doing, even deliverables, like all of our reports, our PowerPoints. I let them know how many presentations I've given, how many people are participating, what kind of feedback. So we also do things like SurveyMonkey, where they say, is this feel like it's important to the community once a presentation is given? So we're trying to measure all of those, because you don't want to allocate resources to something that the community doesn't necessarily need, and that the community isn't supporting. So we're trying to target those specific things through a variety of different ways with our metrics. And at any point, if any of you are interested in seeing what we've done so far, I'd be happy to forward those on also.
Sure. Great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
You guys have a lovely evening. Thank you for having me.
Next, we have the public comment period. We do not have anybody that signed up, so we'll move on to the next agenda item. Consent agenda items.
Sure. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Next, we have our public hearings. public hearing number 1, public hearing and action to approve resolution number 2020-005, authorizing publication and posting of notice of intention to issue certificates of obligation for the purpose of financing certain stormwater improvements.
Good evening. My name is Lupe Granado, Finance Director. Back during the budget process, the city was seeking to have some funding for some much-needed stormwater projects. There were 4 stormwater projects. In the month of December, we were noticed by Texas Water Development Board that we qualified for the low-interest loan for these projects. I'm going to introduce Mr. Tom Spurgeon, our bond counsel, to go over the notice of intention resolution that's on your packet. And this is an issuance of COs to the Texas Water Development Board.
Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Tom Spurgeon. I'm with McCall Parkerson Horton in our San Antonio office. Delighted to be back. What you're doing tonight is the first part of a first step for the issuance of your COs, which you've done on many times before. It requires, following the passage of the resolution tonight, there'll be a notice placed in the newspaper for a couple of weeks. It must be produced or published at least 46 days in advance of when you come back to actually award the COs. So the schedule has been built up to have you all approve the actual awarding of the COs on March 17th, your second regular meeting. About a week before that, the Water Development Board will set the rates, which we expect will be less than 1%. This is a subsidized loan. Of the $7 million, you're going to be issuing COs in the amount of $6,975,000. Again, but a very low interest rate, and then there's a $25,000, essentially a grant that they call principal forgiveness agreement. So that's really in a nutshell what you're doing tonight is taking the first step to move forward with the issuance of the COs and authorizing the publication.
I'm all in favor. There'll be at least 2 projects for District 1. But if you, I'll move to close the floor. Or any comments, I guess, from the public?
This is a public hearing?
I'd like to entertain a motion to close public.
We have somebody coming.
Oh, we have I'm sorry. Anyone?
I was just going to say, as a conservative, I'm normally against debt, but when you're talking about almost no interest and for something we desperately need, which is drainage, I'm all for it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Is this project going to cover the Four Corners flooding issue? Or is the funding for this project, I'm sorry?
The 4 projects is $2.6 million for the southmost water plane, $1 million SCADA covered improvements, $2.4 million for the Impala pump station, and $1 million for the West Brownsville drainage.
Wow.
Yes. So, yeah, I think the water plane park should cover the Four Corners.
Dodo's coming up to answer the question.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Yes, this funding will help alleviate the flooding in that area. There's not a direct project for Four Corners, but it will improve the drainage in a large area of the, I'd say almost most of Brownsville, except for a little bit of the west side.
So it's not going to completely solve the Four Corners issue?
It'll help
It's just-
alleviate.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Motion to close public hearing?
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
I'll move to approve.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Next, we have public hearing number 2, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2019-040 to rezone from light retail G, dwelling G, to apartment H for 0.2496 acre of land out of south 20.122 acres of block 19, El Jardín subdivision in tract 33, share 19, Espiritu Santo grant, and a 0.017 acre of land out of lot 1, block 1, amending plat of Canyon Valley subdivision replat located at 2732 Old Portisville Road.
Good evening, Commissioners. So this property is currently looking to rezone the use district as well as area district. It currently has 2 use districts, which is dwelling and light retail, and the area district is G. The applicant is looking to rezone to apartment H. This property has 0.26 acres, and the proposed use is apartments. This is the aerial view of the property. Within the vicinity, there is also other multifamily developments to the south. There's single-family dwelling, and there is also duplex to the south of the subject property. This is a zoning map. The predominant zoning is light retail and dwelling. There is also apartment, general retail, and medium commercial. This is a 200-foot buffer map. There were 35 mailouts and 0 written opposition. And I just wanted to give you some background on this case. This case did begin, or was presented at the P&Z Commission in August 8th of 2019, or last year. At that meeting, the neighbor to the to the west of the subject property, he was claiming that a portion that was being rezoned actually belonged to him. So the commission decided to table the item. It was presented again on September 5th. The neighbor actually requested for additional time to acquire legal advice from his attorney. Once again, the item was tabled and presented on October the 3rd. So the owner dispute continued and litigation began on this item to dispute ownership. And P&Z decided to table the item until further notice or until legal proceedings finalized on the property. So on November 27th, a final court order ruling in the favor of the applicant was submitted and was sent to legal department. And on December 2nd, legal department authorized staff, after reviewing the document, to proceed with the zoning case as was submitted. So at the previous P&Z meeting on January the 9th, P&Z did support this rezone from dwelling G, light retail G, to apartment H.
They did?
Yes.
And on Menchaca, right next to it, are those duplexes or are they single homes?
They're apartments.
They're apartments? And there was no opposition to apartments being built in this area?
No.
Would they be required, well, no, to add sidewalks, although they would go to nowhere?
Yes, ma'am. Every new development requires the addition of sidewalks.
So you said there was no opposition to this?
No, we did not get any verbal or written opposition, other than the neighbor that was claiming ownership. In the previous meeting, after proceedings had finalized, he did not show up to the meeting, and therefore there was no opposition, neither written or verbal.
This is a public hearing, so is anyone here?
Yeah. Is there anyone here on this item?
Motion to close public hearing?
All right, we have a motion to
Second.
close. We have a second. All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
The public hearing is now closed. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve.
We have a motion. We have a second. All those in favor, please state aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Next, we have public hearing number 3, public hearing and action on first read on ordinance number 235-2019-067 to rezone from general retail F to general retail G for Lot 2, Block 242, Brownsville Original Town Site located at 744 East Ringgold Street.
So for this property, the applicant is looking to just rezone the area district from G to F, from F to G. The use district is to remain the same. This property has 0.1377 acre, and the proposed use is a duplex. It is fronting East Ringgold Street. Here is an aerial view of the property. There is single-family dwelling within the area, as well as duplex apartments and commercial businesses. The predominant zoning is apartment. There is also dwelling and light industrial to the north. This is a 200-foot buffer map. There were 34 mailouts and 0 written opposition. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and future land use plan. P&Z did support this rezone from general retail F to general retail G.
You said there was no opposition?
No opposition.
All right, this is a public hearing. Anyone here on this item?
to close the public hearing.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor to close?
Aye.
All those opposed? Public hearing is now closed. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve?
We have a motion,
Second?
and we have a second. All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Public hearing number 4, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2019-068 to rezone from dwelling G to apartment G for lot 26, block 1, Street Tropez subdivision located at 2521 Old Port Isabel Road.
So this case, I do want to point out, it did begin as a specific use permit. It was submitted that way by the applicant. After review by staff, staff recommended that rather than a specific use permit, the case be a rezoning, since there was already a wide variety of zoning within the area. And based on the opinion of staff, an apartment zoning would create a good buffer between residential zoning and the commercial zoning that is to the south of the property, which I will show in a minute. So the applicant agreed to this, so it turned into a zoning application. The request is now to rezone from dwelling G to apartment G. This property has 0.72 acres, and its proposed uses for apartments, and it is fronting Old Port Isabel Road. This is an aerial view of the property. To the south, there is commercial development, there's single-family dwelling, and to the north, single-family dwelling, there is also commercial development and multifamily developments. The predominant zoning is dwelling and general retail. There is also light commercial, medium retail, and apartment zoning. This is a 200-foot buffer map. There were 18 mailouts and 0 written opposition. The request is consistent with the Comprehensive Plan and Future Land Use Plan. P&Z supports this staff's recommendation to rezone from dwelling G to apartment G.
So I have met with that neighborhood before, and although nobody's here, I don't think they were noticed because it was empty lots, right, on the other side. So my only question is, what kind of buffer is going to be placed between the houses that back on Malaga Court?
Well, there were no conditions set on the property as to buffering, but I do want to point out that since apartments are considered a commercial development through the site plan review process, it is required to have at least a 6-foot vegetation buffer in between the commercial use and residential uses. So they will be required to have some sort of landscaping in between.
Is there any way that we could enforce something that's more strict?
Yes, you have the authority to do so.
Yes, Commissioner, if you'd like to include maybe a 10-foot wide buffer or a 12-foot wide buffer, you can condition this approval.
Okay.
It can be a landscape buffer with trees or of that sort.
Were the surrounding homes noticed?
Yes, ma'am. So everything within the 200-foot buffer map was noticed by staff. So we, as mentioned before, our system is connected to whatever Cameron County has on record for ownership. So it gets sent to those properties that fall within that 200-foot buffer.
So there was no opposition?
Yes, sir, no opposition.
I just have met with that entire neighborhood over issues that they've faced on the other side.
Okay.
And it was very serious to them with that. I know that this would really, really bother them. And I just want to make sure, I mean, I could say right now 12-foot buffer, but I want to be comfortable. Those lots are very close. The cul-de-sac is very close to that area. How many apartments would be built here?
With the proposed area district, they can have up to 9, but they're capping it at 6.
Okay. And do you have any plans? No, right?
No.
So, I don't know. I know it's not really protocol to table but I just want the neighbors to be comfortable with apartments that are right next to their homes. So I would ask, I understand if it's not allowed, but I would really beg the commission to table this item just so that I can make contact with that neighborhood and make sure that there's not an issue with the buffer that's going to be in their backyard. You'd be okay with that?
Talk to Gina's too. They're right next door to it.
Okay.
Gina's.
Yeah. Oh, yes,
You're gonna
Gina's,
talk to
yes.
the owners,
Yes,
right?
yes. I didn't understand what you're saying. Gina's Cafe, yes. So I'll make the motion to table.
This is a public hearing?
Oh, sorry.
All right.
I'll
Is there
move to
any-
close public hearing.
Is there anyone else here on this item that would like to speak? Okay.
Motion to close public hearing?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll move to table.
Second?
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion tabled. Item tabled.
Public hearing number 5, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2019-069 to rezone from dwelling Z to light commercial Z for 19.631 acres of land out of a 66.70 acre tract consisting of part of blocks 45 and 55, Palo Alto Grove subdivision, number 1, Share 22, Espiritu Santo Grant, located near Old Alice Road.
So the property owner is looking to rezone the use district from dwelling to light commercial. The area district is to remain the same, which would be Z. This property has 19.631 acres, and the proposed use is for construction, to move the headquarters of a construction company and to have their equipment storage on this property. It is fronting Old Alice Road. Here's an aerial view of the property. As you can see, most of the land use surrounding this property is undeveloped land. There is also single-family homes to the west. The sports park is to the south. To the north, we have the correctional facility and the county maintenance facility. And to the south, undeveloped land currently. That's the location of the CDCB development. The predominant zoning within this area is dwelling. There's also general retail zoning. There's apartment and light commercial. This is the 200-foot buffer map. There were 12 mailouts and 0 written opposition. At the previous, or at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, staff did have some concerns as to the proximity of residential uses and also the sports park. So for example, Villa Los Pinos is approximately 0.26 miles from the closest property line. The proposed single-family subdivision that was reported by CDCB, which is Butterfly Grove subdivision, is 0.09 miles, and the sports park is 0.27 miles. So staff does have the recommendation of having a 6-foot vegetation buffer or screening fence with a minimum height of 6 feet along the property lines. So the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and future land use plan. P&Z did support this rezone from dwelling Z to light commercial Z.
Is there a plan, are there plans for a fence other than the buffer, vegetation buffer? Because if they're gonna store equipment there and there's neighborhoods, it attracts kids or.
Right, so as was mentioned before, for every commercial development, when it goes through the site plan review process, we do require the 6-foot vegetation buffer. Now, the concern was expressed at the Planning and Zoning Commission, but the commission did not make any additional recommendations or impose additional conditions. So we also wanted to express those same concerns here with you, since you have the authority to put any additional requirements that you may see fit. So
Yeah, for example, Commission, you can restrict outdoor storage, not allow it. If you so choose, it's up to you.
well, and
That might be too restrictive, but at least a chain link fence or something to keep people out of their yard. But so that's why I'm asking, they haven't submitted any plans that would include that already?
The applicant did represent to the planning commission that he intends to erect a chain link fence around the perimeter of the property.
Okay, well, okay. It's public.
Yeah, this is a public hearing. Do we have anyone here on this item? No?
Please say your name.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Abel Gonzalez. I represented the Gonzalez Limited Partnership. Also, I represent G&T Paving. And the reason I bought this place, I said about 10 years ago from the county, because my business right now is in the middle of town. It's surrounded by a lot of subdivisions. And I want to move my office and my warehouses up there. Like the county got, they're my neighbors there. The county got an office there, similar. That's what I want to do. So.
That's right north of it, right?
Sorry?
Right north of your property, the county has.
Yeah, well, next, and the same blocks, I bought 19 acres and they have 20 acres.
But are you planning?
There's a ditch around us.
And you're planning to do a fence around your yard?
Oh, yes,
Okay.
yes. Yes,
Well.
Yeah, okay.
Anybody else?
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Actually, I have a question. Is CDCB within the range of getting notice for this project since their new development is close?
No, it's not.
Okay, well,
Okay. This is a public hearing. I'd like to entertain a motion to close.
Motion to close public hearing?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion.
and I'll move to approve it.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. We have a second. All those in
Second.
favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion
Thank
carries.
you.
Good luck, sir.
Public hearing number 6, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2019-070 to rezone from general retail F to general retail G for Lot 5, Block 95, Brownsville Original Town Site located at 1012 East Jefferson Street.
The property owner is looking to rezone just the area district from F to G.
Bless you.
Once again, the proposed use is a duplex. This property has 0.14 acre, and this property is fronting East Jefferson Street. This is a aerial view. There is single-family and commercial business within the area. The predominant zoning is general retail. There's also apartment and light industrial to the northwest. This is a 200-foot buffer map. There were 29 mailouts and 0 written opposition. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and future land use plan. P&Z does support this rezone from general retail F to general retail G.
Can you give me a landmark near there? Jefferson, is that near the, I'm having trouble seeing on your map. Where's there's Putenat, okay.
Where's
Eighth,
Putin?
over to the left, 8th.
Oh, the white
Yes.
roof? Okay.
Okay.
Also, just to point out, this is an existing structure. They're just refurbishing an existing structure and conditioning it into a duplex.
Okay. This is a public hearing. Do we have anyone here on this item? All right, I'd like to entertain a motion to close.
I'll move to close.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
I'll move to approve it.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes.
Public hearing number 7, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2019-071 to rezone from general retail F to general retail H for lots 8 through 21, block 64, track 1, Hardin's addition to the city of Brownsville located at 1230 South Expressway 7783.
So the applicant is looking to rezone the area district of the property from F to H. The use district is to remain the same, general retail. This property has 0.49 acre, and the proposed use would be a mixed-use plaza. This property is fronting South Expressway 77. Here's the aerial view of the property. There is commercial business in the vicinity as well as single-family dwelling. The predominant zoning is general retail as well as light industrial dwelling and apartment. This is a 200-foot buffer map. There were 38 mail-outs and 0 written opposition. So for this property, staff did have some concerns. We actually met with the developer. So they're proposing a mixed-use plaza. They're actually looking into putting residential uses on a 2-story structure. The residential uses would be on the 2nd story, and the first level would just be commercial business. As of right now, he did not have an actual idea as to what uses he's gonna, well, commercial uses that he's gonna be putting in there. But one of them for sure was going to be a vehicle inspection station. So that's where some concerns arose, since vehicle inspection stations do require the honking of the horn to check vehicles. So being proactive, trying to look into possible noise complaints, we talked to the developer to see if there was a way to reconfigure the property to mitigate these concerns. So the configuration that was originally presented, the development did not have adequate flow of traffic. Where the ingress and egress points were located, there was a possibility that vehicle stacking on abutting thoroughfares like 12th Street and South Frontage would be triggered, since there wasn't adequate flow. Traffic safety concerns arose, and also the adequate amount of parking. So these concerns were mentioned at the commission. P&Z did support this rezone from general retail F to general retail H.
Across this 12th Street, there is another kind of a muffler shop or something.
Yes.
Do they do inspections there, do you know?
No, not to our knowledge.
So the whole issue is the horn honking?
Yes, possible noise complaints.
What's the required amount of parking for a business like this?
It depends. It depends on the use. So since they did not, for example, the residential uses, or if it's going to be considered as an apartment, typically it would be 2 parking spaces per unit. For restaurants, it's based on occupancy load. It depends on the size, the square footage. So since he did not have something concrete as to say, I'm going to have these businesses that are going to occupy certain square footage, we are not able to determine the amount of parking. But based on the size of the property, which is 0.49 acres, having all these uses may cause some, to a certain extent, may cause burden on traffic and the amount of parking.
Does he understand that there could be a possibility, once everything is built, that he may not be able to lease out a lot of these, locations because of lack of parking? Because I know that's an issue that's coming up a lot, that you have 4 or 5, a plaza with 4 or 5 locations, and they want to open up a restaurant, but there's other businesses there, and they don't have enough parking. They don't meet the criteria.
Yes.
Are they aware that that could happen, since?
We had a pre-development meeting in which all the departments were in attendance, including engineering and traffic, and the building division of our department. And this was mentioned to him, that based on the size of the property and potential uses. For example, a restaurant requires quite a bit of parking in order to be in compliance.
Is there a shoulder, there's no shoulder there, right, that can be used for parking either? No. I think.
Not on the highway side.
Can we require them to have a fully soundproof inspection bay? I'm kidding.
But he would have to come back for building permit and all of that, that would then identify, he would have to at some point identify what he's gonna do with it, and then, so it could be stopped at that point.
That's correct. I think the parking issue can be managed, and in fact, the Planning Commission is currently reviewing your parking regulations to see if we can build in some more flexibility to provide different uses, shared parking and off-site parking to count towards required parking. We'll be bringing that to the commission once the Planning Commission is finished with their review work. I think the real challenge here from a land use perspective and a conflict between two competing land uses is the applicant is proposing some automotive-related uses, and he's talked to us about potential car sales and some limited car repair, as well as the automobile inspection, and that development will be only separated by an alley to existing single-family residences on the backside. And
Well, he's
so,
gonna have residents upstairs too. How does that affect the parking? How many does it need for that?
well, it'll all have required parking, so it must all ultimately meet the current regulations, or if we revise the regulations, then he'll have to develop under the revised regulations. When we met with the applicant, we talked to him about possibly using the process to move the building as far away as possible from the residence, sliding to the front of the property of the building, because the current layout that the applicant provided staff pushed the building all the way to the rear of the lot as close as possible to the existing single-family residences. But he wants to maintain that flexibility to site the building either as far back as possible and place the parking in the front, or if he chooses to place the building all the way up to the front and place the parking on the backside, which would provide a little more separation from the existing single-family residences. So I think he decided not to condition the property, though. Is that correct? So,
Right, he did not want to condition the property because his argument was that he did not have set tenants yet, he did not have a design, so therefore he did not want to be bound to a particular design that may potentially affect it.
And that's where I have issue.
So the rezoning from F to H, what is that main change that's happening here?
The main change in the area district would just allow him to have 0-foot setbacks in order to maximize the amount of construction area. Now, he would still need to comply, for example, with the landscaping buffer, but it would give him an additional amount of square footage to be able to fit the proposed development.
If you didn't change the zoning, would he still be able to fit the proposed development?
He would need 25 feet in the front of setback, 10 feet along 12th Street, and 5.5 feet on the remaining side and rear. So he would be greatly reduced as to square footage.
Okay.
So staff recommends,
Yes, staff did recommend.
I'm sorry, what?
Staff did recommend.
Staff did recommend, okay.
Any conditions or no conditions? Did you want, I mean, you could add a setback if it's 0 lot lines on all sides, projected residential.
okay. So staff is recommending approval because the existing setback on the rear nearest the residence is only 5.5 feet. So we don't see a lot of downside to rezoning and allowing him to remove that 5.5 feet and go to 0. But in our conversations with the developer, we suggested that he take his building and push it as far towards the highway as possible. But he just wasn't willing to commit to that condition.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Do we have anyone here on this item?
Motion to close public hearing?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing is now closed. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve.
Does staff recommend that we implement that or approve as is? with a condition, or?
I mean, we wanted to express the concerns to the commission, to you guys, so you were aware, and especially to avoid potential future conflicts or complaints from abutting residential uses. In this situation, the authority would lie on you to provide the additional condition. But we can definitely modify a setback with this rezoning for the rear portion that's abutting the residential use.
So just to clarify, all we're doing is, if approved, we're just changing the setbacks. We're not approving use, we're not approving configuration or parking, it's just changing the setbacks.
Yes, ma'am.
All that comes back to us later when he's ready, right?
Can you repeat that?
All of the use and all of that comes back whenever he's ready.
Well, since the use is not changing, he is still allowed the use. In this situation, he's just looking to maximize the area of construction.
Okay.
But he would still be allowed to do the exact same type of development. The only difference is the setback.
So he will not be coming back to you. Basically, his land use entitlements are in place. Now it's just how much freedom he has on the lot to place his building within the setback.
But we don't know what it's going to look like. We don't know anything of.
Yeah, it's not required at this step in the development process, and so we were suggesting again that the building pulled all the way up to the expressway right away in order to avoid potential noise conflicts between the existing single-family residence and the proposed development. We have some special event businesses within the community that we're currently wrestling with their distance and noise complaints from single-family residential developments, and so we're just making sure that we're communicating to the commission that those conflicts are out there, and we just want to try to prevent them as much as possible in the future.
And they can't park along 12th Street, right?
No, there's no area to park.
So basically, they're trying to reduce the space where they're going to, which they're going to have to allocate to parking, correct?
No, they're reducing the setbacks.
Yeah,
Setbacks are not parking.
Okay, well,
Right. If let's say they left the setback as is with 25 feet in the front, they can still use the setback as parking. Here,
and if you reduce it, can they still park on that? If it's, say, reduced to 5 feet, can they still park on the 5 feet setback?
yes.
I guess the only other thing I can think of is if you do maybe we can say if you do an auto related use on site that includes noise, then maybe your setback, at least from the rear, you can request that it be maybe 5 feet or 10 feet. But if he puts in restaurant use and provides parking, then maybe that mitigation wouldn't really be necessary, because it's not as noise producing as an auto related use, and that maybe that's the way to alleviate some of the, not cause an additional concern with regard to noise to the residential adjacent properties.
My concern is that we have that problem like along 14th Street and the frontage road. And so these used car lots really maximize the space, and then they start parking all along the side. And if they don't fill it up, then they start parking along the alleys or in the residential streets. And these are homes that already don't have parking garages. And so it's taking up residents' parking spaces. So basically, by approving this, we would be perpetuating that problem. True or not true?
Well, for the purpose of the development would be that they have to park within their own development. They wouldn't be able to park on the alley. Now,
But it still happens. And then we have to call code enforcement, and that takes a long time.
It really depends on what the ultimate use is, right? So we don't know if we're perpetuating. Can we table and say you have to come back and tell us what the specific use is before we agree to rezone?
You certainly can limit uses, if you can limit the site in terms of the layout of where the building would be located, if that was a commission's desire, and you could send the applicant back to provide you more information to help you make that decision.
Because I don't want to perpetuate it either.
We're
On the
just-
other hand, we
yeah.
don't know if he's going to end up with that use that's going to be a problem. He may decide to use a different
We might be
use.
over strict. We really don't know what we're doing. He's asking us to predict what he's going to do in the future, and I can't do that. So I'll motion to close public hearing if nobody else is here.
I think we did
We
that
already
already.
did that.
Oh, you're right. So I'll move to table.
All right, we have a motion to table. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
And how many
table.
residences could they have upstairs, do we know? What, I mean, could it be more than one theirs, more than theirs?
It can be more than one. He didn't, like I mentioned, he did not have a set design, so
That's okay,
We're going to need to see something.
Specific.
yeah.
So it's not denied.
Okay,
Did
so
we
that-
already
Did you
do
call
the
the
vote?
question,
tabled
or did we vote?
We
Okay.
tabled it.
We tabled
Okay,
it.
so next item.
Oh,
Sorry, I gotta be somewhere.
Public hearing number 8, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2019-072 to rezone from apartment J to general retail J for lot 7, block 82, Brownsville Original Town Site, located at 603 East Washington Street.
the applicant for this property is looking to rezone the use district from apartment to general retail. The area district is to remain the same. This property has 0.14 acre, and the proposed use is a snack stand or a snack shop. This property is fronting East Washington Street. Here is the aerial view of the property. There is single-family dwelling to the north, east, and west. There is commercial businesses to the south. As you can see, there's mixed, a variety of zoning. There's apartment, general, retail, professional office, light industrial. This is the 200-foot buffer map. There were 28 mailouts and 0 written opposition. At the P&Z meeting, we did have a concern as to adequate parking for the development and preservation of historic character. It was pointed out that for the parking requirements, the development does have to go through the site plan review process, and for the preservation of historic character, since it lies within the historic district, the property would have to go, or the development would have to go through the Historic Preservation Office for approval.
For their exterior.
Yes.
So-
So,
Go ahead.
the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and future land use plan. P&Z did support this rezone from apartment J to general retail J.
So even though it says no opposition, I got calls on this that were opposed from within that radius. So I'm not sure, maybe they just were shy about officially opposing, but I did get
At
calls.
at the commission meeting, we had one individual express his concerns, which were the ones I just mentioned. We did not receive any written opposition. So that's why we mentioned that there was no opposition. We only consider it to be an opposition or an opposed case when there is something submitted through city secretary.
So the calls I got were about the concern about it not being consistent with historic preservation and so on and so forth.
That's right. I think what Martin's suggesting is that the opposition we consider is those individuals that are officially notified in the 300-foot.
No, the one I got
But we
was-
did have public testimony by an individual who was concerned about the impact on the historic character of the neighborhood and the use to some degree and how it would interface with this.
But that can
flooding
be
map.
solved by the preservation board
That's right.
telling
They still
them,
have to
you
go
know,
through site
it needs
plan
to look-
review and meet all of our development regulations, which is going to be a real challenge for this small size
So
lot.
what is a snack stand? It's not a restaurant.
No, based on what the applicant suggested, is just more of
Like a
raspas,
historic raspa stand?
snacks.
I don't think so.
Use preserved water.
Hey, everybody could have a shot at generating sales taxes.
I don't know.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Do we have anyone here on this item? Okay. I'd like to entertain a motion.
I'll move to close public hearing. Is there somebody here?
Oh, there's someone here? Come on up. Please state your name.
Peter Salazar. I'm the one that's building the snack stand. If you have any
Okay.
questions.
Great.
I have a question. You know, more or less, I guess, how is it going to look like? What do you mean by this next thing?
It's gonna be a to-go, just stop and go. Just a snack stand, nachos, raspas, just a quick, but make it look, I guess, nice. I've been cleaning that lot. It's a high traffic area. There's a lot of. I've made a couple of police cases. There's needles. There's female underwears. There's a lot of stuff. I already tried cleaning up the stuff. There was a lot of bushes. I cleaned them up just so it could look nice.
So you just want to use it, right?
Yes, sir. Just put it to work. Make it nice.
Anybody else?
Okay. Any
I'll move
any
to
comments?
close public hearing.
Okay, we have a motion to close.
Second?
We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those
I'll move
opposed?
to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do you have a second?
Second, yeah.
We have a second. All those in favor?
May I ask
Aye.
you, can I ask you, is it too late to ask one more question?
Yeah, go ahead.
If it's too late, that's fine.
No.
Can I still ask a question? So if this gets approved, then it goes to, then he has to produce plans of what it's gonna look like and so on and so forth, and it goes to historic preservation? Is that the deal?
Yeah, so it has to go through the site plan review process. Within the site plan review process, the plans get distributed to all the corresponding departments or entities that are involved for new developments. One being the Historic Preservation Office, since it is within the Historic Overlay District. So our Historic Preservation Officer would look into it and would have to, it would go to HPDRB for
And
for
there's
approval.
teeth in that, because there is a beautifully restored building right next to it. I'd hate for it to.
So in addition to the historic review, he still has to meet the building code, zoning code, and all the other site development codes that are required. It's not just, you're not gonna wheel in a snack stand, go into business. It has to have a restroom, has to have parking, it has to have lighting. It's
Good.
Quite a bit required.
Okay, I'll call the question.
Okay, I think we had a motion and a second. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed? All right, motion carries.
Was there any opposed?
No?
Okay. Good luck.
Next, we have items for individual consideration. Action item number 9, consideration and action to award change order number 6 to Spa Glass Contractors, Inc. for the terminal project at Brownsville South Padre Island International Airport in the amount of $305,044.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor Pro Tem, City Commissioners. The item before you is change order number 6 to Spa Glass. It's for the purchase and installation of 2 additional chillers for the new terminal construction in this amount of $305,044, and staff recommends approval.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Action item number 10, consideration action to award a contract bid number BEP-01-1220 to Sames for the construction of the battlefield extension in the amount of $1,027,152.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, once again. This project consists of a 2-mile extension of the existing battlefield trail that will extend from the battlefield towards Los Fresnos. It will be within the fence line of the battlefield, so to access it, you have to go through the battlefield. We received 5 bids for this project. The lowest responsive bidder came in at $1,027,152. And we're awarding this with the base bid and alternate A, which alternate A is going with stainless steel guardrails versus galvanized. We're recommending approval on this item. And one thing to mention, this item is being funded in its entirety by a grant from the Legacy Foundation, which is requires 0 match dollars from the city. Thank you.
Thank you,
Motion to
Legacy.
approve.
No, thank you, Legacy Foundation.
Yes.
Thank you, yes.
All right, we have a
I'll let you
motion.
make the motion.
I did.
Second?
We have a second. All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Action item number 11, consideration action to approve a memorandum of understanding between the City of Brownsville and the Brownsville Public Utilities Board regarding exploratory energy conservation program.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners. I'm Elizabeth Walker in the Office of the City Manager, and I'm so delighted to bring before you this memorandum of understanding that's been a couple months in the making. Toward that end, this is a throwback slide. You may recall it from our budget presentation, I believe in August, when we first introduced the concept of an energy savings performance contract. We have, since then, been working with our partners at PUB to design a partnership that preserves the benefits of this type of contract in a program of our own design. And tonight's MOU for consideration memorializes this partnership. These are the opportunities that are traditionally touted by an energy savings performance contract. Essentially, how to leverage energy savings for reinvestment. So as proof that this has been an ongoing dialogue with PUB, this is a slide that came before you just the very last meeting, in which it is that PUB presented that LED rate structure. And as part of that presentation, I believe as number 4, if they presented a conversion of streetlights to LED that will result in estimated annual savings of $771,364. Tonight's MOU does speak to the implementation, a timetable by which it is that they would be converting the streetlights to LED fixtures, we hope over a 5-year period, about 20% of inventory each year over 5 years. But then this begs the question, what can we do between now and then when it is that we expect to maximize this $771,000 per year? What can we do to generate energy savings between now and then? And the answer is this. We've come up with the Brownsville Energy Conservation Program. And in that program, as memorialized in the MOU before you this evening, it speaks to whereas in further pursuit of this shared objective of reduced energy consumption, the City and BPUB will consider for implementation on a program-by-program basis eligible programs as defined by the Integrated Resource Plan at municipal facilities, such as but not limited to HVAC upgrades, lighting retrofits, building automation, roofing improvements, and generator installation. So together, we will identify energy-saving projects and develop a cost-benefit analysis for each of those proposed projects. Another throwback slide. This is back to where it all began. This is the list of various facilities that we had originally identified could benefit from just such an energy savings program. These are the various needs, the opportunities that may be addressed through this partnership and the various city locations. Our intent by this program is to leverage energy savings and in some instances capital avoidance to catch up on deferred maintenance and modernize our facilities. So the original example that we presented in August still applies through this partnership by this MOU. Effectively, the PUB would serve as our ESCO partner. They would help us to identify the project and quantify their savings. And they may help us to invest in those primary costs that are identified there. Again, this is a slide that was presented earlier to kind of elaborate on the different potential projects that we could address through this partnership. And so when we presented in August, we said that next steps may include an investment grade audit. This memorandum of understanding preserves the elements of an investment grade audit, but instead of going with a private sector partner, we would be relying on our partnership with PUB. We still may need to repurpose existing CO funding and possibly issue new COs to close the gaps on those projects that together we determine are not eligible under an energy savings program. Do you have any feedback for me or for Mr. Bruziak or for Mr. Eddie Hernandez that are in the audience?
I think this is great. Thank you so much for all your work on this.
Thank you very much, and
Thank you.
the credit certainly to PUB. They've been extraordinary partners in this initiative, and I'm very eager to see it come to fruition.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Action item number 12, consideration action to approve resolution number 2020-006, requesting the Texas Department of Transportation to place the East Loop on the state highway system.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Pete Zapula. I'm Executive Director of the Cameron County Regional Mobility Authority. This resolution is basically to update the information. Both county and city had passed similar resolutions, I would say about 8-10 years ago. And we're requesting that the state, through TxDOT, place this road on their system, which means that to do that, they have to take off an equal amount of miles. In this case, it's roughly about 12 miles. But placing it on their system would guarantee us that they fund the project for construction. And right now, the estimated cost of the construction is $100 million. So it's part of the process. This, if approved, will be sent to TxDOT, and then they'll forward that to their commission for their consideration and approval. We're currently working on the environmental documents, about 80% complete. The schematics are 90% complete. We're addressing comments that we've received from TxDOT. We plan on having a public meeting in May of this year. The last public meeting we had on the project was 2014. Because part of the project is a new location, it will require a public hearing. Right now, we're anticipating a public hearing in October, and we've got a consensus from TxDOT. If we keep our schedule, we should receive environmental clearance by December of this year. We are having a meeting with TxDOT later on this week to expedite the right-of-way acquisition phase of the project, anticipating that it will be on system. And so once it's on system, then it speeds up quite a bit. The RGV MPO Policy Committee is meeting on the 29th to hopefully make a recommendation to the Transportation Commission to include in the draft 2021 UTP $100 million for the project. We had a technical advisory committee meeting of which I chair a couple of weeks ago, and we're making that recommendation to the policy committee. So from there it goes to Austin. There is a 45-day comment period, and then in July the Transportation Commission will consider it. So we don't anticipate any issues. We want to show as much progress as possible. As you all might recall, there are 4 big components to the project. There's TxDOT, there's the International Boundary and Water Commission, because we're relocating a portion of the levee. We're negotiating an agreement with the agency as we speak. There is a part of a border fence that's going to have to be relocated, but there is an order by the federal judge that already outlines the criteria for that part of the project. So everything's coming together on the project, and we're just hoping that we can get it on system so that we can get the funding from TxDOT.
Pete, you start off by saying that 12 miles have to be, I guess, taken off in order to put these 12 miles.
Correct.
Do you already know which 12 miles? Or?
Yeah, they're in part of the resolution, both for the city and the county are in there. And once we get closer to getting it on system, TxDOT will verify that mileage. We might have to make minor adjustments, but if we do, we'll have to come back. But for now, this is the information I received from TxDOT, and both for the county and the city.
So that means that TxDOT will no longer be responsible for the maintenance of those 12 miles?
Correct, but they'll add the other 12 on the new alignment.
Okay. Well, they've been waiting a long time for that East Loop, so.
Everything is coming together now.
Second.
Yeah. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pete.
Good luck.
Action item number 13, consideration action on resolution number 2020-003, to repeal and replace Resolution Number 2019-091, authorizing the execution of an advance funding agreement between the City of Brownsville and the Texas Department of Transportation for Hazard Elimination Safety Project Out System.
Good afternoon once again. This item was brought to you at the last meeting, and at the order of Mr. DeCos, it was asked for no action to be provided. The resolution has been corrected, and we're requesting approval on this item. If y'all have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. This is regarding the street light for Tulipan.
Motion to approve?
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second. Did someone second?
You
Oh, I did.
seconded.
Okay.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Action item number 14, consideration action to award a term contract bid number HMA-07-1219 for the purchase, delivery, and pickup of hot mix asphalt materials for the City of Brownsville.
This is a contract that we've previously talked about. It's for the purchase of asphalt, and this is for material only. This is for our internal use within Public Works. As part of this contract, the previous contract, just so you're all aware of it, expired, and we were no longer able to do any extensions on that contract. Therefore, we re-advertised. We received 2 bids from Upper Valley Materials and Frontera Materials. We've selected both of them. In case one plant is not producing asphalt, we can purchase from the other. And it is awarded in a 2-level system, our primary supplier and then our secondary supplier. The cost for the asphalt is about, the low bid is $59.50 per ton. And then our second option is the plant for $62.50. We are committing ourselves to purchasing 850 tons a month in order to obtain better pricing. And we're recommending approval for this contract.
Motion to approve?
Well, and may I ask, for how long though? So that price is guaranteed for how long?
1 year.
Okay, so then
And you
when,
budgeted for that 850 tons a month?
We have budget for that amount.
so how does that affect though, the street repair plan?
I'm sorry?
How does that affect the street repair plan?
Well, the only effect that we have is an increase in material price of about $9 to $10, depending on which plant we go.
Per ton?
But per ton, yes. We're trying to accommodate by different construction methods to save a little bit of money and be able to complete everything that we have on the list. But we probably will see a shortfall on the streets for reconstruction. We'll definitely see that. This definitely will affect our CIP plan, because our CIP plan, most of that is being contracted out, and the bulk of it is on the pavement cost. Okay? We'll probably be back to you in March for a budget amendment on the CIP plan, but we're not looking to delay the projects in any way, shape, or form. At the time, once we have a good cost analysis for how much overrun we're going to have, we'll definitely share that with the commission.
So that's just before we do the vote, that's something that I would like to try to figure out how to avoid that for next fiscal year, so that we don't get into this situation.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, with the cost of oils, this was something that
Unforeseen. It was out of our control.
I think that this contract should have been in place at the beginning of the fiscal year.
We had a contract in place, and we had the 3-year extensions. The contract expired, and we were trying to maintain the same pricing, but due to the increases, there's no way that we could. So that's why we were kind of forced to re-advertise.
Okay.
Like I said, that previous contract had been in place for 4 years already.
Commissioner, we will look at revising, looking at our contingency. That's something maybe we need to relook at, kind of understand how prices have been increasing, and maybe when we budget for our new CIP projects, maybe that contingency should be higher given what we're seeing in the marketplace right now. So we can't, so as to avoid budget, these budget situations where we don't have enough budgeted.
Because we're always going to need asphalt, so I think we need to figure that one out.
Yeah, that's why, I mean, on this contract itself, Robert, how many year extension on this contract?
Commissioners, this is a primary term. It's until February 28, 2021, and then we have a renewal for 2 additional years.
at the same price or an incremental
No,
increase?
only the primary term, it's guaranteed for this price. Coming back the following year, we need to mutually,
Negotiate.
because we need to ask the vendor if they're willing to maintain the same. If not, we will have to come back with the renewal with the possible amendment, if the city wishes to go with that.
So if it's a 3-year contract, but the price is only fixed for the first year, and it becomes too expensive for the second year, can we get out with certain notice, or are we locked into doing business with them at their price for 2 more years?
We have terms and conditions that allow us to terminate for, in this case, if there's an escalation in price, and we don't want to set that, we have the right not to renew. And in the case that for performance issues, we also need to get out of the contract, we also have those options.
Okay. Then,
And we have 2 vendors, by the way, primary and secondary.
thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Well, we've got a first and a second, so I guess we go vote.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please state aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries.
Next, we have board appointments. Action item number 15, consideration and action to appoint members to the Environmental and Conservation Task Force.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners. This is a new board, or task force, I'm sorry, that was created last commission meeting. So the appointments are all commission-based, so it would be one appointment per commission member to be uniform with all of our other boards and commissions. With the exception of the mayor, we'll just wrap up with him next meeting.
Okay.
So if you all have thought about your members, this would be the time to appoint. Staff liaisons will be Carol Vasquez and Dr. Rodriguez.
Okay.
I would like to motion to appoint Dr. Jude Benavides.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor,
Wait,
please
can
state
he be on
aye.
it since he's already on PUB?
It's a task force?
This is a task force.
Right, this is ad hoc, so it doesn't really
I
affect.
asked that last time.
Okay, if I might, I'd like to appoint Bridget Collis, C-O-L-L-I-S.
Did we vote on Dr. Benavides? I'm sorry.
Do we have to vote on these? Or we just appoint?
Yeah, you all can make your
Yeah.
nomination.
Okay.
Yeah, just,
Sorry.
go ahead, Ben.
Okay, Bridget Collis.
I'll appoint Christopher Gabler, Gabler.
I'll appoint Vito Cardenas.
I'm going to appoint Sandra Morfitt.
She's my
The mayor
science
did,
teacher.
the mayor did text me his appointment. Do you want to make it, or do you want to wait until he's here?
I don't know if is there a legal issue with that? I think it could be.
You can.
Proxy.
You can nominate him, and the next meeting, he could go and present at that time.
I mean,
Go
he
ahead.
just texted me if you want him to wait.
So it's in record. Go
Just,
ahead.
yeah, you can go ahead.
Bill Berg is the mayor's nomination,
Good choice.
appointment, rather.
And mine, Monica Davila.
Already did.
You already did?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Next, we have action item number 16, consideration and action on resolution number 2020-008 to appoint a member to the Downtown Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone Number 3, City of Brownsville Board of Directors.
I'll move to appoint Frank Wood.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, guys.